Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, who overslept a little bit this morning. My eyes aren't quite awake. I'm drinking my very black coffee, and I am here today for a writers club, and we have such a wonderful guest author this morning. I met her down in Fairhope, Alabama, when we were doing an author event, and we actually were sharing a house down there, and we had so much fun. Great pie. And she's got a very unique sense of humor. And I think you're going to love what she has to say. So T.K.Thorne, Teresa, here she is. And she's on the left of me. I guess that'd be on your right. And I have Executive Director Mandy Haynes with us, who is reporting from TK's in Birmingham, Alabama, and Mandy's down in Fernandina Beach, Florida, and now Ruthie Landis. Ruthie, you look so different from last night. I still have Victorian hat hair, but Ruthie's from Chicago. I think your audio's off, Ruthie. She's one of our authors, and she's always joining in. And honest to God, everybody here is like bestest friends. I can call these people at any time and we just have a wonderful, wonderful time. But this morning we want to begin with our Writers Club, which is something that we started because we wanted to have better access with our authors. And so many of our book club members and our friends that are authors are always looking for information on publishing. So we decided to have authors mentor to authors. We're doing this Facebook Live because we want you to show what our book club is bringing out into the world. So TK is here this morning, and I'm going to turn the program over to her. Do you need to have any slides to be shown at all? Mandy's my co-host. We're good to go. Okay, Teresa Thorne, Birmingham, Alabama. She cut her own hair, y'all. She's such an artist. I mean, she is everything. So I'm turning it over to you. Ta-da!
Thank you, Kathy. Now you finished that coffee.
I need it. My eyes are okay. Go ahead.
I got it. And hey, Mandy, and hey, Ruthie. It's so good to see you, all of you. I hope we're going to have some fun this morning. I'm going to have do a little a little talk about movies and writing and just have some fun with it. And the whole idea is, plot. And how do you find plots, which is like the worst thing for me. So I'm going to start with something that if you've ever watched more than one episode of Star Trek, when Captain Kirk, Spock, and Dr. McCoy step into that, I wanted to say elevator, but it's a transporter, and a crew member steps into the away team with them, and he's got on a red shirt, that man is marked for the chopping block. Because when laser beams start bouncing around or some poisonous alien flower spurts, somebody's got to die and the red shirt is doomed. And we all know that, right? And it's kind of but the question that I ask is why? And, after thinking about that for a long time, the answer to that question is really an important key to making your fiction work and to keep your reader turning pages. So before I get back to that, though, I want to say something that I always say when I'm talking about writing. And that is that the question that you want to ask about your writing is not, is this good or bad? That's a trap that so many of us fall into. It's not about whether something's good or bad. It's about whether it works and whether you can make it work better. And the it is, of course, story. You've probably heard from someone we all know that it's all about the story.
I've heard that.
Really?
Yeah.
Alabama has some really, really wonderful authors and scientists, believe it or not. And one of them is E.O. Wilson. He's a very noted biologist. And he says that storytelling is hardwired into our brains. Now, I could have told you that, but it's much more impressive that he did. Now, even in our dreams, if you think about it, there's story. One thing connects to another, even if it's kind of strangely. Sometimes in my dreams, I know the ending before it happens. Has anybody else ever felt that way?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, well, I know how this is going to end here, but we're getting to it. So time is all mixed up in your dreams, but it's still a story. And sometimes other morning, yesterday morning, in fact, I woke up and I was having one of my really strange dreams, which I can't explain, but it was about two disparate people, and they had a common goal, but they were anyway. And so when I woke up, I just finished it. And, I just figured out a better way to finish it. And I do that a lot when I wake up with a nightmare.
Me too.
Oh, good, Ruthie. I'm so glad I'm not alone.
No, I have a nightmare and it's like I'm at the precipice of dying or something like that. And then I go, wake up, rewrite this. You can make the ending be different, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah.
Okay. So, and even in our waking life, we're the main character in our story, the story drama that is our life, really. And so what writing does is take this story and the stories that we tell as authors, and all of our hopes and fears and dreams that we write about, and they're transferred into group hopes and fears and dreams and values. And this happens in the telling of stories that become myths or factual stories, but it all becomes myths in our minds, because even history is a myth. How we tell history and how we learn history, and the little stories that we take with us that are like codified little pieces of history. It's all part of who we are. The other thing I want to talk about, and then I'm going to get back to Star Trek and other things, is that science has actually looked at MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. I can't believe it's morning and I said that. At what actually happens in the brain when we have tension and resolution. What areas light up and how the brain reacts to tension, and then how it reacts to resolution. And it's the exact same way that it reacts when a person is reading a story. So I think that's really cool. And that is, the whole reason why people pick up a book and they can't stop turning the pages is because there's a tension there. How is it? Where are we going? How's it going to end? Even if you know the ending of the story, like if you're writing a nonfiction story, like I wrote Last Chance for Justice, which is about the 16th Street church bombing case that killed in Birmingham in 1963, where 4 young girls were killed. Well, most people that know history know how it turns out, but people said it was like a page turner. Why? Because they wanted to know how it turned out. So as long as it's those questions that build the tension, and it's also, of course, character and plot, which I'm still not quite there. So a successful story, something has to happen. Duh. It has to happen to a character. Usually it happens either externally or internally. And character and plot are intertwined in this fascinating way. For me, character drives plot. Some people say the other way around, but from my personal writing, it's the character. It's all about the character. I don't know what the plot is usually, but it's about the character and who they are. So a plot for me, the purpose of a plot is to help build that character and show character. And there's a why to that, and there's a how. And I'm going to go to the how right now. The how is by seeing how the characters feel and think in a situation. Plot tests them. Plot sometimes tortures them. And y'all, you cannot know who a character really is until they have to make a choice. And that's all about it. Now I'm going to get into some fun things that there are some spoilers in here. If you haven't seen these movies, you're gonna have to plug your ears up. But I need to know tell the plot. So there's a movie called Armageddon with Bruce Willis, and it's about a bunch of characters. They have to go up into space and plant a nuclear bomb on an asteroid in order to keep it from hitting Earth. And by the way, that's a very bad idea to do. But they did it in the movie, and Willis sacrifices himself to save the world, and we care about that. But it's not really that we care about saving the world, which is really interesting. That's not what we care about. What we care about is that he's doing that out of love for his daughter. Okay. His daughter's fiance was the one that was supposed to go down into the hole and set off the nuclear bomb, which is kind of fatal. Okay. And Bruce Willis knocks him out in the elevator and takes his place. And he does that because he loves his daughter. And because of that, we care about him, and we cry and we boohoo, but but the tension is released at that. Okay, here's an important idea that took me a long time to figure out. In a successful plot, somebody has to pay a cost. And that cost is sometimes that somebody has to die. But the cost, whatever it is, helps us care about the character and what happens to them. And the reader has to care in order for the story to work well. So you can't have the tension that needs a resolution unless you care, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, it's watching those silly people in red shirts that are going to get blown away. And that the red shirts are a device that's supposed to make you worry about Spock and Kirk and Dr. McCoy. But it's so obvious it is completely lost its effectiveness along the way when people kind of figured it out. But still, it's important to understand the reason why they did that. So a cost needs a setup. Setup helps you learn about the character and care about her. All stories need a setup like jokes. Have you ever tried? I have this, some people can tell jokes and some people cannot, and I'm in that category. I'm in the cannot category. Some people remember the setup, but they can't remember the punchline. I remember the punchline, but I can't remember the setup. And it's so it's like telling the joke. Are you ready for a joke? Okay, here's the joke. To cross the other side. Okay, not a joke, not funny. But if I ask the setup, why did the chicken want to cross the road? Then the punchline becomes funny, right? But all by itself, what is it? Nothing. So you got to have a setup. So there's another asteroid hits Earth movie called Deep Impact.
Oh, yeah.
It has Robert Duvall, heartthrob, and he and his team are the heroes of the movie, right? They got to do something else. I forgot what they did. Probably another atomic bomb set off. Bad. But anyway, in that movie, it was really a subplot that caught me. and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there's a woman who is I don't know, she's on the president's PR team or something. She's in the know when all these decisions get made about evacuation and so forth. And she's a VIP. So she has a seat on the helicopter that's going to take all the VIPs off to a safe place. And we also know from a phone call that she and her father are very estranged and they haven't talked to each other in a long time. So here's the character reveal, and which is part of the plot. She's getting ready to step on this helicopter and to save her life. And she decides, she sees a mother and a child, and she steps back off and lets the mother and child take her place on the helicopter. Okay, instantly we care about this person, right? We realize she's not just a big wig in the government, she has a heart, and she's made a big decision. And so we already care about what she's going to do and what decision she's going to make. And she makes another choice that is so powerful. She goes to find her father at the beach house, and she stands with him on the beach facing a tsunami that's coming in. And we know they're going to die. We know the cost for that choice is going to be her life. Her father was already going to die, but she chose, and she chose to be there with him. And I'm going to cry just thinking about it.
You set it up.
In the morning too. That's a good story. Okay.
Oh, you're so fun.
You get such a payoff from that, even though it is heartbreaking. So, but you had to know, if you didn't know the setup, if you didn't know that it was her choice, if you just had the scene, just had the punchline, just had the scene of her standing there with her father, well, it might be sad, but you really wouldn't care. You got to have that setup. And there's got to be a contrast and a cost. How would you feel about spring if it was always spring? I mean, I guess you could be living in California, right?
Yeah.
Or at least before it caught on fire.
Holy crap.
So, spring all the time is boring.
It is. It is.
And it's no big deal. There's no impact. You have to experience the winter before you can feel the joy of spring.
It's true.
In the case of Game of Thrones, where winter is always coming.
Yes.
We really don't have time to worry about winter because characters are dying all over the place. And what does that result in? If you're not so mad, you don't want to watch another episode, you watch every episode because you're afraid for the characters that you care about, because he does set up well and character well. So you care about him. So you talk about tension. Oh my gosh.
That's true.
Because that R.R. Martin, who's the author of those books, proved he will kill off anybody and make people suffer in horrible ways. And when you think enough, you get more. So here are kind of I don't like to say writing has rules, but writing does have tools. So here's a tool. Everything has a limitation, even magic, even superheroes. Without kryptonite, Superman is boring. He's like perpetual spring because he's invincible. So who cares? And Thor has a drinking problem. Iron Man is too smart for his own good. Hulk has an alter ego, Bruce Banner, who has like serious social issues. And Spider-Man is emotionally tortured. It's just, it's all, you have to go through all that. So you get the picture. So every power or every positivity has to have a cost, even magic. So the magic wielder must pay some price. And sometimes it's physical pain, oh, I've done magic, I got a headache, which I use of Rose. And one of my stories that's not published, one of the early things I wrote about King Arthur's ancestors. And Merlin, of course, is there. And the cost of magic for Merlin is that he loses a random memory, and he never knows what memory is going to be taken or how it's going to affect him. Now, that would, if I was a magic wielder, that would inhibit I'd think twice before using that, right? Some memories are really important, some are not. Thank goodness, because I certainly lose a lot of them, and I don't work magic. That's not fair, is it? Okay. So somebody has to, just like using it, somebody's got to pay for happiness. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's too boring. So, would you like to read about a likable character that has no problems? Nah, me neither. So my first book here, Noah's Wife, starts out this way. My name, Naamah, means beautiful or pleasant. I am not always pleasant, but I am beautiful. So we have a little attitude here and establish something about the character. And then she says, perhaps that is why I am trundled atop this beast like a roll of hides for market and surrounded by grim-faced men. Now we have a problem. So we have character, and then we have a problem. There is no story without problem. Multiple ones are better. Without problems, there's no tension again, right? And without tension, there's no release. And without character, we don't care. And without character, the character making a choice and doing something, we don't care. So all of this is all interrelated. So the problem doesn't have to be as dramatic as Kidnapped. Let's see, in my second historical fiction book, which is this one, Angels at the Gate, this is the story of Lot's wife. Young Adira is presented with a puzzle by her adored father, one she is obsessed with unraveling, but it's not easy and she keeps getting it wrong. So it's a problem that also functions to reveal Adira's character. She is not going to stop trying, and we know something about her, and we love that about her. And I love your puppy dog, Mandy. He's got to have a hug.
She's in school, sorry.
It's okay. I got a needy one too. So now we're going to jump from Star Trek and from asteroids to Cinderella.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Yay.
The setup for Cinderella is that we see that she's a good-hearted young woman who is mistreated by her stepmother and her sisters. Okay, and we care about her. Why do we care about her? And one thing, for one reason, we can kind of identify with her being the underdog and the person that's always, the victim. But the other thing is she talks to mice. So that's when I decided I loved her. Then she goes to the ball, falls in love with the prince, and lives happily ever, right? No, she makes a bad choice. She stays too late, loses her fancy clothes, her carriage, and her shoe, and has to hobble back home to endure her wretched sisters and her stepmother and blisters. She lost everything in order to give us tension that we have to have before we find release as the prince finds her. We got to have that or we have no story. So authors often, not always, but they often kill people to create a cost. Ever read one of the classic hero on a quest story where, you know, in the beginning, the hero starts gathering these characters that are his little helpers around him. And you're going, okay, which one of these guys is going to die? Which one has got on a red shirt? Now, the clever writer, you don't really know until it happens. Who's going to get it? And so you keep reading because you've got tension. Which one is going to die? Normally, the main character doesn't die, although Hemingway did that in the story. And I remember going, I can't believe he just did that. At the end of, I think it's For the Whom the Bell Tolls. Sorry if I just messed up that story for you. But how did he get there and why is still valid. Okay. Usually, if there is a child in peril, usually I go, okay, it's not going to kill the child, but somebody else has got to pay a price here. Although, you know, that, like I said, there are no rules. Stephen King did that in Cujo.
Oh, yeah.
I was so mad at him. Anyway, and you know, if there's a dog in the story, oh my God, the tension is there automatically, because if the dog gets killed, which several books do that, you know, I'm out of here. So one question that you might ask as a writer is, does a character really have to die? And the answer is no, but stay tuned. So look at Dickens' Christmas Story. Right? Scrooge witnesses a future where Tiny Tim dies, right? The ghost of the future shows it to him. But he changes the future, doesn't he? So Tiny Tim doesn't die. But it doesn't matter because the reader experienced Tiny Tim's death by looking at the future.
Right.
It happened emotionally, even if it didn't happen in real life. That's why Disney can get away with Anna in Frozen dying when her heart is pierced by her sister's frost. She dies and then comes back to life, right? Actually, 3 characters in that movie did that. Elsa, Anna, and Olaf. They all, you know, you all live through they're gone. Oh no, how could that happen? And then poof, they're back. Okay, but that works. It works because the reader or the watcher, if you were an adult, if you were an adult and a writer, you knew they were coming back. But if you're a kid, you don't really know. You experience that loss, and that makes you able to be happy. That makes the tension be able to be released, and you're happy. In Lord of the Rings, oh my God, that's such a wonderful trilogy. Do you remember, if you read it, when Gandalf falls into this pit and he's fallen down, and you're like, oh no. Gandalf falls in that pit for more than one reason. One reason is that Tolkien needed his characters to go on without Gandalf's magic, because Gandalf was almost like Superman. If you got that magic, it's going to decrease the tension that you feel when Frodo and is in danger, right? So he needed to get Gandalf out of the picture. That's one reason he did it. Three reasons. The second reason is Gandalf made a choice to confront that whatever creature it was. So we love Gandalf because he made the choice to sacrifice himself to save Frodo in the mission, right? But the third reason is that you want to suffer with the loss of Gandalf. He's all we know is he's dead. He's gone. And then he comes back, poof. But it's okay because we suffered his death as a reader. So you don't always have to actually kill, but you have to have a cost. And that cost can sometimes be thinking that something has died. And that, that cost is the winter before the spring. And it should not just occur in the big arc of the story as the climax, but really in a lot of scenes, you can use this. And here's one small little example. I call it the expectation twist. And I know you guys, being avid readers that you are, have experienced this. It's when the character expects the best, but doesn't get it. Okay. So I'll take Snow White. I loved Snow White as a kid because she had dark hair, which I did. You can't tell except my eyebrows, that I used to have dark hair. But Cinderella was all of Sleeping Beauty was a blonde. Cinderella was a blonde, but Snow White had black hair, so I identified with her. But it's her naivety and her trust in the witch's apple that leads to her coma, which is a kind of death, right? So we experience that death again. And it's only because she's so naive that something bad happens to her. If Snow White was too suspicious to bite the poison apple, if she put her hand on her hip and demanded, "Who are you anyway, Granny? You think I haven't read what happened to Red Riding Hood? No way I'm going to eat an unwashed apple, girl." Okay. The story would crash. Maybe you have a better story, but that one wouldn't work.
Oh my gosh.
So if you're an astute reader, when a character starts being bubbly about what is to come, you say, "Oh," right? So that is why in the Hunger Games, always think she's going to fail each test, right? It's always doom is coming. And she does great. She's amazing. But if she had been full of confidence and then did great, we would think, "Oh, you bitch." Who cares about you? And when the cost comes, when her friend really dies, we wouldn't care. Serves her right. Okay. Cinderella starts out depressed about the ball and her sisters, and sees there's no way to fulfill her dreams. So when her fairy godmother appears, we are excited for her because we had that tension with her. What would have happened to that story if she didn't give a rat's ass about going to a stupid dance? And by the way, having a godmother appear to solve your problems is normally a plot. No. It's called a Deus Ex Machina, which literally means God out of machine. And a Deus Ex Machina is when some character, event, ability, or object solves a seemingly unsolvable problem in a sudden, unexpected way. And it's often used as a solution to writing yourself into a corner where the problem is so extreme that nothing in the established setting suggests there's a logical way for the characters to escape. For example, a protagonist in a 19th century romance falls off a cliff, and a flying robot suddenly appears to catch them. Okay. That is a Deus Ex Machina. No, can't do that. But Cinderella's fairy godmother works because it's already set up as a world of magic. I know, you remember we got talking mice and pumpkins and turning into carriages and so forth. So, and the godmother's magic has limits. That's important, remember? And she only temporarily solves Cindy's problem. Then it's up to Cindy. Okay. So the big question in plot is, how do you figure out what happens next? And here's a couple of possible strategies. One thing that somebody told me, I don't know where I heard it years ago, is to put two or more unrelated concepts together. So in Noah's Wife, I did a lot of research about Noah's wife, and then I started writing her character to see what would actually happen. And it turned out after the first chapter that I diagnosed her as having Asperger's syndrome. Okay, book takes place in 5500 BC. And my first reaction was, you can't make Noah's wife have Asperger's syndrome. And I argued with myself. Excuse me. I argued with myself about that. But myself won. That's the convenience about arguing with yourself. You get to win no matter what. Anyway, so she did. So I started researching Asperger's, and that's who she is. That's her character. And it worked. How about this one? Take a paralyzed veteran and stick him on a planet whose soul is being killed by the military. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
Avatar.
Mm-hmm. Loved it.
Yeah. Or take a financial penny pincher and add some ghosts.
Yep.
We got a Christmas Story. Another way to think about plot and where it's going to go, and this is kind of what I do, is what do I want to see in my character? What do I want her to truly be? Do I want her to be brave and heroic? And then maybe you need to start with her being a wimp afraid of her shadow, so that you can put her in a crucible and she'll have to make choices and so forth. So that's the setup, right? I have another trilogy, which is one of the Pulpwood books. It's called House of Rose, and it's about a police officer who discovers she's a witch. Again, two kind of disparate things got put together. But I decided that Rose needs to learn about friendship and family. And so she is, actually, I'm not being honest here. Rose started out being herself, and she was a dedicated loner and had no friends. So then I decided that she needs to find out about friends and family. And that's really the way it happens. So it can happen either way, but the character, has to have an arc and a growth. So in her words, she was more prickly thorns than soft petals. So whatever your character is, you can't coddle her. You all have heard this before. You love her, but you have to hurt her. Sorry, there has to be a cost, physically or emotionally, both. Somebody has to pay the cost for the good stuff. And sometimes somebody has to die. And that is the end of my little remarks. And now I'm open to questions. And if you're watching on Facebook, I promise you I will go to Facebook and answer all your questions, but I don't know what they are at this point.
Yes, at the end of it, you'll be able to go back and look at it. But I have to mention that she's got a new book, and it's Behind the Magic Curtain: Secret Spies and the Unsung White Allies of Birmingham's Civil Rights Days. Amazing story. And, the interesting thing about you, TK, is you are all over the genres. But every aspect of your books, you champion. I mean, you are a master storyteller and you're hilarious. If you could do one thing, you should write a children's book of fractured fairy tales, because your take on Snow White and Cinderella, I'm telling you, adults and kids would be, and Cindy, you know, I love it. I mean, I'm a big fairy tale person, and
That's a great idea.
you would be perfect. And reading those aloud, you got to do that. So what I want you to tell everybody is your backstory. And then we'll, ask questions as you're going along. Tell us a little bit about who you are, Teresa. You're living, you just rescued 2 horses, and they're doing well now. And tell us, what were you like as a kid?
I was pretty much a tomboy as a kid. I like to climb trees and get dirty, and I was the director of the neighborhood plays. When the kids would get together, and gosh, I bet you were too, Kathy.
I was.
Yeah.
Clothesline with the sheets. The dogs were part of our act, like you've got your little dog there. Snicky was our, we'd act out Little Rascals. It was the Little Rascals. The whole neighborhood would come, and we were smart kids because we would go to the rider bikes across the railroad tracks to the little hometown grocery store, mom and pop place, and buy penny candy. And then we'd sell Kool-Aid and penny candy at the intermission for a nickel a piece instead of a penny. And so we were entrepreneurs too. And my dad had a fiberglass rowboat, on a trailer, and that was our stand. We'd line up all the candy on the top of this turquoise boat. And it was in the middle of our backyard. And we were making $2 or $3 for every show, which we were rich. So what did you do?
Absolutely, yeah. I put on puppet shows, and I was the director of the plays, and I just thought it was because I was the oldest in the family, but I think it was this storytelling need that would come out. And I would every night when I would go to bed, and I don't know if I've ever told anybody this. So
on Facebook Live, here we go. Yay.
We're on Facebook Live and are recorded. When I would go to sleep, I would dream that I was I don't know if I even Wonder Woman I guess she was around, but I could fly, and I had superpowers, and I would help people. I would help family members, and they would go, "Oh, whoa, how wonderful is that?" So I guess I had a needy ego or something, but I always wanted to help people, and I guess eventually I went to school. I wanted to be an astronaut, and that didn't work out, and that's okay because I don't like elevators, y'all. There's no way I'm going to save the world from an astronaut, because you got to get up there in space. And anyway, got sidetracked. So I went to school in social work to help people. And that didn't actually work out exactly as I planned either, because I accidentally became a police officer along the way. And I did that. I decided to try that. And, that was sort of a combination of being a superhero and helping people, right?
Yeah. Right.
And the thing that I loved about it was the same thing the reason I wanted to be an astronaut really was not to go up in space. That was just a requirement. The reason that I wanted to be an astronaut was to meet aliens. I'm serious. Now y'all are laughing. I wanted to meet aliens. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And as a police officer, I never got to actually meet aliens, but I met a lot of strange people. So I lived my dream. And then I worked at a, so I was a police officer and I worked my way up the ranks for, two decades and retired as a captain of a precinct. And yes, y'all, I was the captain of a precinct. But my sense of humor has sometimes done me well and sometimes not. I would be sitting in very serious staff meetings and something would come bubbling out of me that was related to something I found humorous or silly, and I got a lot of looks. But, I can't stand a meeting to get serious and stay serious too long.
I would have loved to have been a little mouse watching that.
Yeah, I got in trouble for that sometimes. But, what could they say? So, you have to have a sense of humor. To me, I mean, my father, when he was dying, still said hilarious things. He really did. And I never forgot that.
You think that's where you got your sense of humor, was your father?
I think so. And he was dry. He was really dry. One time he decided he was bedridden. He decided that he wanted peanuts, so we got him some peanuts and we're sitting in the bed watching TV and eating peanuts. And of course, the shells get everywhere and I'm sweeping up the shells and I said, somebody has made a mess here. And Daddy says, I wonder who that was. Just little things, it just bubbled out of his nature. And I can't remember anymore, but anyway, so that's an important part. You ask who I am. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because the pandemic has, maybe, I'm sure I'm not the only one, has kind of forced us to be alone with ourselves. And, I'm a writer, so I like being alone, but when I'm alone, I'm doing something.
Right.
And the pandemic hit, I had a lot of editing to do. So I did that, but the creative stuff was really hard and still is hard. I'm still not there yet. And so I had to kind of start thinking about, well, what if I never write again? What does that mean about who am I? So, I was, a lot of people in the police department, when they're police officers and when they retire, they have a hard time because being a police officer is not just a job, it's who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I was running a business and that role of running the business, when I retired from that, was now who am I? And what kept me going was that I knew I was a writer through all that. So I thought, okay, the only reason I worked all my life was so I could retire and be a writer full time, right?
Right.
That for the last 6 years, I've been writing. That's who I am and who I was. And now I can't write. Who am I? Who am I? And so I'm having to be quiet. That's why I took up some painting and cut my hair. I'm having to be quiet and see who am I beyond doing what I do, beyond doing writing and doing painting, doing all those things are doing. Who am I? And I don't have an answer to that question yet, but this is a time. I recently picked up this little book, and I don't know, somebody said that it's a real important book to them, so I bought it. It was called 12 Tiny Things. And I haven't been able to get beyond the first tiny thing.
Oh my gosh, you're so fun.
Well, the first tiny thing is space. And it is so profound that I haven't been able to I keep going back to chapter 1. And it's about space around us, you know, in painting, Kathy, it's the space around something is as important as what's there, and that what's there doesn't exist without the space around it. Just like you can't appreciate the spring unless you've had the winter. And so what is the space around me that defines who I am? And I'm still on that tiny thing, trying to figure that out. And when I do, I'll let you know.
Well, you know, that I think we're all there. And as women, as we get older, you know, and I've had some major life changes and then more major life changes, you start questioning everything. And so the only thing that can quiet my mind that's going 90 miles an hour, you know, I've seen myself on film and I just look so calm. But in my mind, 50 things are going on. I have to go and paint. And sometimes it's just walls, just repainting I've repainted my entire house during COVID because sometimes it's just a physical painting, but it gives my mind the chance to wander without anxiety, you know, and I'm a people person, and you are too. I can tell, you know, I'm sure you have people, but these things that we're doing, these writers clubs, the book and film club, the book club, this is my lifeline to the world right now. And it's never going to be exactly the way it was. But there's a lot of good in this too. I mean, you're working on your art and you are an artist. I mean, and you're an animal lover too, which growing up, I was an animal lover too. I had more fun. I didn't play with dolls. I played with animals and stuffed animals. I love my stuffed animals. And so, you know, I wanted to be Tarzan. Everybody goes, well, what about Jane? I go, no, she was a wimp, man. I wanted muscles and I wanted to be able to swing through the trees, and I have no muscles or upper body strength. So it was always a disaster every time I tried. I mean, I lost all the skin on my hands trying to swing out my tree holding my dog. Disaster. But this, our sharing of our stories, and that is, to me, the most beautiful thing that's come out of COVID is that we are having real conversations now instead of just small talk. We're sharing each other's lives through our stories, whether we're reading, you know, your wonderful books, or whether we're talking about Ruthie's wonderful new book, The Musings, or Mandy's, you know, she's doing the Reading Nation magazine, which is just phenomenal. And she's working on her new book and her short story collection that is going to be coming out. These things are connecting us. And to me, there's been great beauty that's come from COVID. So if we can focus on that, and I'm going to be real honest with everybody. I'm on Facebook, and I told my doctor, you know, because I'm dealing with all this diabetes stuff. I said, I'm really crying every day. I cry myself to sleep every night. And she goes, it's so common during COVID. She goes, let me prescribe a low dosage antidepressant. And I was like, oh, something's wrong with me. And she goes, listen, we've got to get through this. And I have learned that sometimes it's okay to get some help. And so that has helped me get through the crying jacks. And I think it's important to know our mental health is being affected by this. And I'm saying it on Facebook. I know how much it's helped me, because I cry over stories, but I'm not crying myself to sleep every night anymore. I am trying to figure out my places. And so by us being a community, a tribe of readers sharing stories, we could get everybody to do this. Everybody's walking this journey together in these isolated cells. So if we could just do random Zooms with your friends. I decided that every month toward the end of the month, I'm going to do a birthday party for everybody in September. The end of the month, we're going to have a Zoom birthday party for all the September friends and family and everything. Let's all come together and just have a celebration of we're here and be safe. But you're a delight, and your sense of humor always, I read so much, I can usually tell plots and everything, but I never know what you're going to say, Teresa. And that is the delight in having you on the Writers Club, because you bring such joy from the personal experience of you talking to us, as does Ruthie, as does Mandy. I want the world to know that we can all get through this by the sharing of our stories. So thank you for sharing your story. Any other questions or comments about Teresa's wonderful presentation? One more thing I have to say. As a big Star Trek fan, I watched it every day after school. My favorite thing on Star Trek was who Captain Kirk was going to have an affair with that week. Was it going to be the blue lady or the woman that was wrapped in a fur dress? It was always some weird alien. And I just thought, man, even as a kid, I thought that is one Randy Captain.
Yeah.
For somebody.
Can I just say something about the Star Trek? First, oh my God, TK, this was exactly what I needed to feed me. I'm a therapist, so I see clients on Saturdays, and I rarely can get here to do this. And I got a cancellation, and I was like, Kathy, please send me a link. I got a cancellation and I'm not going to fill it up. And I cannot tell you how this was exactly the meal I needed to have right now. As a person who, was in, teaching actors and in theater and all film and stuff, you're bringing those two things together. And I was like, oh my God, those are those kinds of things that I would say to an actor about playing a character. Let's say you got getting a Dear John letter, right? You always want the characters to start with, oh, she's humming and she's going to the mailbox and she's so happy, and then she opens the mail and there's this letter from John, right? And then whips it open and it's the crash, right? So, there were so many things that you said that was like giving me confidence, because I have been a nonfiction writer, right? Trying to impart, I guess I finally figured out, like, trying to help people become their own best friends. I think that is sort of my mission, and now I've been working on a novel, and, Mandy's helped me out with some great things, but God, everything you were saying, I was like, I got to type all these notes up. That they were so helpful, because I was seeing it in the context of each and every character having to come to their knees, be brought to their knees. We don't like to change, as a therapist, I will tell you, and you were a social worker and stuff, people, you have to be almost brought to your knees to work through the resistance, right? And characters in a story have that same resistance, right? So what brings them to their knees in each one? And you were showing that, you were telling that. And then when you were talking about Star Trek, it was just so funny, because the other day we were talking, my husband and my son is at home now because of COVID. And we were talking about Star Trek. And I was talking about something about like mission statement. And then my son said, well, don't you know the prime directive? The prime directive. I said, what? And then I went and I looked up, what was the prime directive for Star Trek? You will not go into other societies, other galaxies or whatever planets, and interfere with the culture of that planet. Now think of that in the context of Afghanistan and all this. That was their prime directive. You will be supportive, but you will not go in and tell them how to change their culture and everything. So I'm reading this prime directive and I'm going, wow, that was way beyond its time. But what happened at every single episode?
The blue lady.
The blue lady.
The blue lady. Well,
Yes,
they broke the prime.
No.
They totally broke the prime directive every time, didn't they?
Well, but yes, but the prime directive was really aimed at cultures that are not spacefaring cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that they didn't want to interfere if the people didn't know about technology or space flight or whatever. They weren't supposed to interfere. That's why in the second series, once they hit warp speed, the Earth people were able to go into space. Then the Vulcans came to make first contact. So the prime directive wouldn't allow them to do that before, but once Earth had developed to a certain point, they could.
Yeah, so isn't that interesting metaphor though, what's happening in our world? And
Yes.
how, isn't it? It's so like right on. And when you talk about, characters making a mistake or whatever, yes, I understand the specificity of what you just said, but in almost every episode, there's this tension between their mission statement, whatever it is, and whether they're going to make an exception, whether they're going to break the rule, right?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to veer off from your point.
No, you didn't veer off. You enriched it. but yeah, so I just, there's so many things here about, and keeping the tension. And when in a novel, are people like, when in the shape of the novel are people really brought to their knees? Like, is there a spot? Is there a place?
Yes. Yeah.
Can I ask you what that you would tell me?
Tell her.
Well, the knees has to be, well, there can be several places where they do that in smaller ways, but you want the big way to be near the climax of the story. If you're in, as far as the final choice that your character has to make is the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have other choices along
incremental, but yeah.
I have a unique way of when I'm working on a novel. I've been working on a novel forever. I have the beginning, the peak, and the end done, and a little bit in between. All I need to do is go in and fill in the thing. I do it weirdly. A lot of people just start it out and they write all the way through. But for me, if I know what's going to happen, and I know where we started, and I know this traumatic thing that happened, then I can slowly, it kind of ebbs and flows up and down like a mountain range, That's the way I work. Now, that's for fiction. For nonfiction, I had my agent tell me, Marley Rusoff tell me, she goes, what are the aha moments in your life? What are the things that happened to you that changed everything? Write them down. And those are your stories. And that's how I wrote my first book. And that's what I'm working on now on my, The Pulpwood Queen Goes Back to School. The biggest problem that I'm having right now is how much do you tell? And I'm going to share with you guys 2 films I watched this week. One is by one of our authors, Regina Louise. I Am Somebody's Someone, based on her book, Somebody's Someone, Regina Louise. It's on Amazon Prime. You got to watch it. And the other one is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, written by Rebecca Skloot. It was made by Oprah. She plays the daughter of the woman that cells have changed the medical world. I watched those two movies and I figured it out. You just have to tell the truth. You tell the truth. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter. You just have to tell your truth. And then that when you see people that champion those things, and both of these characters, Regina Louise, and of course the woman who Henrietta Lacks, her story, when you see those truths come out, no matter how painful or difficult they be, in the end, I was just tears streaming down my face on both the stories. So I'm going to put this up on Facebook and everything for everybody. But The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot, and Somebody Someone by Regina Louise, who also just happens to was a Redken hairdresser and out in California. And I connected with her back in the early 2000s when she was writing the book, and to have her book become a movie, it's wonderful. But you need to read the book. You need to read the book, and you need to read all of, I mean, you've written fiction, nonfiction. Your books are terrific. Teresa, I'm glad you were here on Facebook. I'm glad everybody that's watching live on Facebook can experience what we do in our book club. We hope you'll all join us at www.thepulpitqueens.com. And we have lots of online programs. And Teresa, I look forward to getting together with you and having some more pie. We got it. That's what keeps me going. And so, you know, in the meantime, we're all going to be gathering for our annual conference in January, which I've got all these authors signing up right now that are going to be featured. So everybody needs to get on board. Go to www.thepulpitqueens.com. Check out our readingnationmagazine.com. And Mandy, as the executive director, and I, and Robert Gwaltney, my co-host for the Book and Film Club, and Paul Roberson, who is my webmaster, runs our international newsletter. We have this team that is storytelling building. We're a community tribe of readers. And any last words for you, Teresa, before we say goodbye to everybody on Facebook and as this goes out to the world?
I just want to thank you, Kathy and Mandy, for what all you're doing, and your whole team. They're great. And thank you for what you're doing for writers and authors. It's a huge thing that you're doing. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I can't wait to read your next book, TK, because you're going to write another one. You're going to write another one. I mean, and if you don't, you don't, but.
Fractured fairy tale.
Listen, Kathy
I
is
love it.
Kathy is right. Like when Kathy gives that my last little book, My Musings, you know, I had 3 books before it, and I'm working on this other book, and it's taken forever, and not even the novel, but another nonfiction book. And Kathy said, you know, take some of these inspirations and create a book. And I just said, I got to stop doing everything else and do that thing, because Kathy's right. And then it became way more than just my little inspiration post. It became so much more than that. And so when Kathy said that, listen to her, she's right.
And it's
I want to read Thumbelina. I want to read your take on Thumbelina.
Thumbelina, I love Thumbelina.
That was when growing up, I was obsessed with that story. Like, I just wanted to get her, like, I wanted to keep her safe. Like, that was I want to read your Thumbelina. I want her to kick everybody's butt.
You know, my favorite fairy tale is a weird one. It's Rose Red. It's the story about the girl, the
And
jewel.
Sisters White, Rose Red, and
It's Snow White. Isn't it like part of Snow White? Rose
Well,
Red?
it's one of the sisters. Everything that spews from her mouth is jewels. And I just fantasized over that when I was a kid.
oh my God, I had that too. And it's like, so the sisters, one was real pale with white hair, and it was like white roses on her side of the door and the red roses on this other sister.
And the other one, toads and serpents and everything came from her mouth. And it was fascinating to me because it was such a visual thing. But your take on the classic fairy tales would be absolutely a little break. And you can do them as little short stories. And, you know, if you need illustrations,
Yes. Woo!
collaboration, I would.
I've got goosebumps, you guys. I got
I'm so
goosebumps.
into that, you know. I'm so into, you know, Mandy and I are both artists, and you're an artist, and Ruthie is an artist too. I mean, the things that she comes up with, I mean, it's just amazing to me, all the things. I mean, I've got to show you guys this. This is the funnest thing in the world for me. This is this basket full of saris that I play with at home, dress up. This aqua one, oh my God. I love what you sent me. Every single thing, my little fountains going over there with the water and the lights. Create the world that you want to be in. If we all just create the world that we want to be in, and that's what this little cabin in the woods is, my little sanctuary, my little Bali-esque world, every day is a joy. And then my other joy is I look so forward to these events with all of you, that this time of COVID, I think when we look back on it, it's going to be that aha moment when everything changed in our life.
Mhm.
So keep exploring all the arts, because that's what this world, that's the beauty in the world, is that we are all creating beautiful things, whether it's storytelling, whether it's songwriting, whether it's, you know, creating paintings or art or whatever, whether it's just anything is telling a story. Theater is telling a story. And so I love the fact that you put on shows as a kid, and I think you could do a one-woman show, don't you? I mean, she could do a one-woman show. Maybe we need to start the Pulpwood Queens one-woman show.
Well, I want Kathy to do one. I
know.
want to direct it.
That is going to be a given. And I love your vision. So y'all holding hands,
Yay.
and we will change the world. So thank you, Teresa. You're wonderful. We'll be back. This will be posted on my Kathy L. Murphy channel on YouTube. And thank you, everybody, for joining us live on Facebook. We'll answer all your questions. If you need to reach me, it's thepulpwoodqueen@gmail.com. And Mandy, what's your email? Which one do you want to give out if they need to?
Mandy.pulpwoodqueen@gmail.com.
Right, because she's got everything going with her magazine. And thank you all. Thank you, Ruthie. What a wonderful morning. Thank you. I'm ready to get to work. So y'all, big hugs, big book love, and we'll see you next time. It's all about the story. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
It was great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.